mentioned, my name is Kaylin Pilkington, and I am the instructor for the Sustainable Business Microcredential. I have education and have worked in sustainability for years, spanning from municipalities, post-secondary, startups, and now I consult businesses and communities of all sizes on their sustainability programs, goal setting, measurement, and reporting. And, when I was asked to make this course, I was really excited because this is something that I get asked all the time. And this course is really a bite-sized amount of information that will help you, regardless of the size of the business. It could be anywhere from one person to thousands of people. It will help you integrate sustainability into your business. And I like to say that it's really important to right size your sustainability. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So this program is really meant for anybody from very small businesses to larger businesses to help integrate this into what they're doing. I do like to start with, what does sustainability actually mean? So if we walked into a room and asked 20 different people what sustainability meant to them, we would probably get 20 different answers. This is a model that I like to use. It's very similar to some other models you might have seen, such as the triple bottom line. But as you will learn in the Sustainability Business Micro-Credential, there are many different ways to actually define sustainability. And the way we define it can also impact the outcomes that we're looking for. So as an organization, it's really important to have a shared understanding of what sustainability is. And this shared understanding and a number of definitions is actually something that we will work through in the course. You might be wondering, well, why should we be incorporating sustainability into business? There's a number of different benefits. These are just a few of them. So purpose-driven. Consumers are really looking for businesses that are values aligned to what they feel personally. And when they find organizations that are values aligned to themselves, this not only attracts customers, but it helps retain them. So it's a really important piece of the business model. It can help with risk mitigation. So there's significant cost savings and organizational resilience that can happen by integrating sustainability into your core business practices. And we do go into this during the micro-credential. There's the protection and promotion of brand. So promoting sustainability practices, communicating that, maybe getting certifications. We talk about all of that during the micro-credential. And we also talk about some of the pitfalls like greenwashing and what to watch out to make sure you're not practicing that, but you can also identify it when others are doing so. As you might have guessed from the first number of points, there's just a growing demand. More and more people are looking for responsible organizations to support with their money. There's a number of different studies, especially as the younger generation is coming up, that they're looking for more than just buying a product from a company. They want to know what the companies stand for and how they're helping make a positive difference in the world. Cooperative and collective action. It's really challenging for some people to think, this little action that I'm doing, what could it possibly do in the larger picture? So one of the things we discuss in the micro-credential is regional alignment, aligning yourself to the global sustainable development goals, working with community and leveraging resources so that you can have a larger impact. Shared resources is a great way to make smaller businesses feel supported and aligned in their actions. And I also wanted to touch on opportunities to increase profitability, growth, and retention. Again, there's been a number of studies that have shown happier employees stay longer, there's fewer sick days. And when employees feel engaged and that they're working towards the betterment of something, there's been reports of people being more satisfied with their jobs and, being thankful for those opportunities to be involved with shaping the organization that they are a part of. So those are a list of a number of the benefits. There are more that you will learn about during the micro-credential. But through these various different benefits, your business has the opportunity to help address big challenges like climate change, income inequality, depletion of natural resources, working conditions, pollution, racial injustice, gender inequality. So you can see that by using a very holistic model of what sustainability actually means, you have the opportunity to impact a lot of really important and necessary areas. At a very high level, these are what the 6 different modules are for the micro-credential. And in terms of audience, the way that this is structured, there's a lot of choice in what you're going to be doing. So this micro-credential is actually applicable to everybody from a CEO to frontline workers to interns and everybody in between. And that's one of the beauties of this micro-credential, I believe. In Module 1, we'll talk about what does sustainability actually mean. As I mentioned, there's so many ways to define it. So having that shared understanding at the organizational level is really important for success. We also discuss connecting organizational goals. We discuss that sustainability isn't something that's done alone or in isolation, and how to collectively band together to work on some of these challenges and move, the community as a whole towards a more sustainable future. In Module 2, we talk about impact investing. So in short, impact investing is really strategies to help generate beneficial social and environmental effects in addition to financial gains. And small and medium-sized organizations have a really great opportunity to create meaningful impact that positively contributes to local economies. And this unit really talks about that purchasing power of organizations and how to move towards more sustainable solutions that don't negatively impact business. You often hear, I'd love to be more sustainable, but it costs so much more. So we talk about that in this unit. We also talk about ESG, so environmental social governance, and SRI, which is socially responsible investing. And we do this through examining a number of case studies. Module 3 is on systems thinking, and this principle is foundational to sustainability. We actually operate within systems every single day. When we're younger in school, we're taught about, weather systems, but we operate within social, economic, environmental, and cultural systems on a daily basis. And because we operate within these systems, our decisions really move a system in one way or another. For example, if we had the idea that everything that we purchase should be disposable and there's no point in recycling or reusing or anything, so everything that we purchase in a store is disposable, then the market would respond by producing more disposable items, which just reinforces that system. So we have the opportunity to use our money and our actions to shift systems towards the more positive. So we review what systems thinking is and how this can be used to make the biggest impact within the systems that we operate. Module 4, during this module, what we'll do is discuss and work through a number of tools that you can use to help plan and implement sustainability action in your organization. In addition to the tools, we'll also go over concepts like co-creation of your goals, measurement, reporting, different leadership styles and competencies, and organizational change methodologies. In the next module, we're going to be focusing on the actual business case for sustainability. We've gone through a number of the different benefits related to sustainability in the previous slide, but doing sustainable action in your business really does have a ripple effect into benefits to the community, to the environments, to society as a whole. So we discuss different ways to create and present sustainable business cases that help you think through the process logically, thoroughly, and without taking a long time. And the last module, we discussed logistics, like supply chain. We also discussed different third-party reporting standards, business and product certifications, professional designations. And in this section, we also cover communications, marketing, and things like greenwashing that I mentioned before. One of the really cool things about the way this course is set up is we've actually created a workbook for you. So as you're working through all of these different modules, you're going to be filling out this workbook. And that is a really, really handy input into your final assessment, because a lot of the work for your final assessment, you'll actually be working on throughout the course, which is always a bit of a benefit. I mentioned that there's a lot of choice in this course. So that means that in your final assessment, you also have choice. You have the option to do a business model canvas. You can develop a business case, have a conversation with leadership, or develop a communications plan. So we really wanted you to walk away with something that was useful, that you could just start using right away once you were done the course. Now, Mackenzie mentioned that we're going to be doing a little micro lesson today. So our micro lesson is actually on backcasting. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar, but I'm going to explain a little bit about what backcasting is. I'll walk you through the various steps of backcasting, and then we're going to work through an example together. So why is it important? What is it? What is backcasting? Oftentimes when I have learned about backcasting, or when I hear people speak about it, oftentimes this Einstein quote is brought up. And that quote is, "We cannot solve our problems with the thinking we used when we created them." If we think about that in context of some of the wicked sustainability problems, that really means we need a new line of thinking. Backcasting, it can really work for anything from large-scale problems to smaller organizational shifts. And what you'll see is we actually use backcasting in our day-to-day lives all the time, and we just don't realize it. I want to start off by talking about what the difference between forecasting and backcasting is. I think most of us have probably heard about forecasting. Most companies use this. They kind of project what they think the next number of quarters will look like, which is essentially a guess on how the company is going to perform based on past experience, past markets, what the current market looks like, and so forth. So there is a level of problem solving that happens here. However, with forecasting, it usually is based on past trends being the knowledge base. There's an example that I've heard several times related to related to forecasting, where they say forecasting can be like driving your car using your rear view window, hoping that the road ahead is the same as the road behind you, which that sounds kind of scary to me. I don't know about you, but this way of planning, this forecasting way of planning, sometimes makes it hard to ask questions like, what happens if we need to change directions? Rather than looking at trend lines that are extrapolated from the past and forecasting where we'll end up, What happens if we need to be on a much different trajectory than what we currently are on? So by definition, forecasting will often end up reproducing the problems that we have today because of the knowledge base that we're using. I do have to say, though, in my mind, forecasting does have an important place. It helps you build on past successes. It helps learn from past challenges and so forth, but it can be limiting in terms of the solutions that we come up with. I strongly believe that forecasting should be a part or a tool when we're doing strategic planning. But sustainability is complex and requires a number of different ways to look for a different solution. And this is where backcasting comes in. When coming up with innovative solutions, the Harvard Business Review recently published an article that noted that we should not be starting from the present. If the present is the current approach to business, the view of the future is likely, in their words, an optimistic extrapolation. If we start with the future and work backwards, this way of thinking can really get us to think outside of the box, outside of the normal solutions that we might come up with. And I mentioned we actually use this in real life all the time. This is another example that I am borrowing, but it makes perfect sense. So think about the last time you planned a vacation. You have this vision in your mind. I want to end up on a white sandy beach. I want to be skiing down a mountain. I want to be immersing myself in culture in a bustling metropolis. Whatever that looks like. You have that vision, and then you work backwards in terms of making decisions. Where do you want to go? What logistics do I have to think of? What time of year does it make sense to go during? And you start thinking about all of those different components and planning, but with that future vision as the first thing that you were thinking of. You can use backcasting techniques, layering them with the sustainability models that we discussed at the beginning to start moving individuals, communities, and organizations towards a more sustainable future. And one of the things that we talk about in the micro-credential is the best tools to layer together, the best tools to use that will not only save you time, but will help you get to that end vision. So this is kind of a diagram of how backcasting looks. So step one, you start with the vision. And for the sake of an example, this is a very simple example, but let's just say I want to implement a paper use program within an organization to make paper use more sustainable overall. So it's important to keep in mind that backcasting can be used for something like a very simple, small paper program, paper reduction program at your organization, but it can also be used for very large scale things like overall organizational visioning. This is a great tool for that as well. So during the visioning stage, we set out our ambitious goal. Don't think about restraints. Dream big and understand that it might require really radical shifts and changes. And you also should understand that depending on what your vision is, it might take years to accomplish it. And that's okay. You're essentially defining what success looks like in this stage. Once your vision is refined, you might need to go through a few little iterations of it to get it looking how you want it to, but we should really aim for it to be smart so that it's really measurable and we know if we are achieving that end vision. So most people are familiar with SMART goals. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So if I was using my paper example, my end vision might be to reduce printing throughout the organization by 80% by 2024, for example. I do want to pause here and mention something and point something out about my example that I just used. Sustainability isn't an all or nothing game. You'll notice that I said 80%. Incremental change actually does make a big difference. You might set out a vision, achieve that vision, but then you might want to take that to the next level, like completely going paperless, for example, using the paper example. So there's nothing wrong with your end vision not being, we're going to go completely paperless. You could make an end vision of it just being 80%. And once you reach that, you could go over this exercise again to try and get yourself 100% paperless if that's what you decide as an organization. After we're done the vision side of things, then we have to do some baseline mapping. So in order to improve, you essentially need to conduct a gap analysis. In order to make change, you need to understand where you're coming from, understand what some small quick wins could be, and what might take a little bit more time. So using my paper example, I'd want to find out information like, what are some of the heavy paper use processes at our business? How much money is spent on paper annually, and so forth. Now, you don't need a stats degree to do this. And I want to emphasize you can dive as deep into some of these metrics and measurements as you want, or keep it at a very high level. One of the things that we do talk about in the course are some online calculators and that sort of thing that will help you with extrapolating this information, making it real. However, you do not need a stats degree in order to come up with some really meaningful indicators and understanding where you are in terms of a baseline. I don't want you to overcomplicate this stage. Sometimes people get into paralysis because they're trying to understand their baseline so deeply. You need to have a good understanding, but don't waste too much time here, or else you'll never get to the solution and action side of things. Next is actions and solutions. So after you understand your baseline, then we're going to start brainstorming. And this is the step that's always so fun. And it's great to get other people involved because, you're only one person, you have your lived experiences and your perspectives, but so do other people within the organization. So if people are not already involved in the exercise, this is a great spot to bring them in. During this brainstorm session, think about actions that would get you closer to that end vision. What challenges do you see? What solutions could help solve some of those issues that you identified in your baseline analysis in the previous step? You don't have to come up with all the solutions in one instance, but it helps to put down as many as you can at one time. If we use the paper reduction example, I might write down ideas like identifying those heavy paper use processes, researching software for digital data storage, issuing print cards or accounts so that we understand what employees are printing a lot and which ones aren't. Coming up with training programs for new software, coming up with communications campaigns on how to reduce paper, coming up with an incentive program on how we could reduce paper as an organization, maybe looking for local programs or grants that are available to help with the implementation of this. Maybe there's a paper or printing policy created. Just because you list it during this brainstorming stage does not mean you'll end up doing it. It's just kind of getting all of the ideas out there so that we can start prioritizing in the next stage. Which brings us to D, prioritization. After you have brainstormed kind of that big bucket of all the things that you think could be done in terms of actions and solutions to get you towards your vision, then you have to start looking for which ones make the most practical sense. You need to look at these through an environmental, social, economic, and cultural lens. What are the implications of the solutions? If I'm using a systems thinking mentality, are there other downstream effects, either positive or negative, that making this change will cause? So really, in this stage, you're narrowing down the actions towards a more step-by-step implementation plan by starting at that end vision and working your way to the present and picking that critical path. So I think that that's a lot of me talking. So it's now time to go over an example with everybody. So you'll all be working on this individually. And because we don't have a lot of time today, nobody will be sharing theirs. But I really encourage you to use this time. I will give you time for each stage, and I will give you prompts to think about really any goal or vision that you have. This could be a sustainability goal, but for the sake of this exercise, I totally get that everybody might not have a sustainability goal in the back of their mind. Think about other visions that you might have. It could be rescuing a dog, buying a car, graduating university, writing a book, singing at a live music concert. Whatever that goal would look like, I would like everybody to either open a document on your computer, grab a notepad, grab a piece of paper, open a new note on your phone, and write down what your goal is. It doesn't need to be huge. Like I mentioned, it could be buying a car. It could be something very simple. So I'm going to give you the next 30 seconds just to choose your goal and write it down or type it out. Perfect. I hope that everybody has had a chance to just jot one of those, a vision that you have for something that you want to get done down. So now we're going to talk about creating a baseline of understanding. Generally, we would now kind of take into account what that baseline is. For this exercise, largely because of time, we're not going to have this as a formal step, but I just want you to take 30 seconds and think about where you are in terms of achieving this goal. So if we're talking about graduating university, are you in your last term? Have you not applied yet? Just take a second to generally think about how close you are to achieving this end vision that you just laid out in the previous step. I'll give you about 30 seconds for this. Okay, perfect. Hopefully everybody has a little bit of an idea where their baseline is. The next step is brainstorming what the milestones or steps or stages could be. Now remember to think about all the actions and opportunities to move yourself closer to that end vision. Nothing at this stage is a bad idea. You will narrow down the best path during the next step. And I will give you a little bit more time for this one because I want you to brainstorm as many ideas as you can. So we'll come back together in about 3 to 4 minutes, and I will give you a 30-second warning so that you can wrap up some of those final ideas before we move on to the next stage. So about 3 to 4 minutes to come up with all of your possible actions and opportunities to move you closer to that end vision that you set out. Just about 30 more seconds. So jot down those last thoughts that you have in terms of the actions and opportunities that you have thought of. Okay. Now, you might not have all of the different steps down, but you should have a good number listed at this point. Now, in some of my previous slides, I mentioned this stage is really great to do with other people, but I totally understand that that's not always possible. So sometimes when I'm doing a backcasting exercise and I'm by myself, I come up with this brainstorm list, and I'll sit with it for, the day or a few hours, because sometimes when I sit with it, I'll think of other solutions or ideas that would be very helpful to add to the list before I start prioritizing. Or maybe I want to come home and have a conversation with somebody about it. Asking like, oh, well, what do you think about this? And maybe part of that conversation will actually cue some other ideas that I have that I want to add to this brainstormed list. So this is particularly helpful to sit on the ideas when it's just yourself, but there's also value in doing that as a group. The challenge with doing it as a group is you can lose some momentum, but if it is facilitated properly, which we do talk about during the micro-credential, either route will work. Now, the next step is prioritization. I want you to now look at that list from the last step and start to chart a course towards that end vision that you had. I recommend starting with some low-hanging fruit. Notice, is there anything in my list that has to happen sequentially? What resources do I have available? How much time do you have to dedicate this? Is there some sort of program out there that can help with some component of this? Is there a grant available? Could you work with a student to give them a great learning experience and also help you out? So start thinking about some of those questions and what is some low-hanging fruit that you could start with. During the course, we discuss several tools and techniques to really help you with this prioritization. In the course, we also take backcasting to the next level. So I like to kind of call this backcasting light. During the course, we'll also layer in indicators and risks, timelines, costs, a little bit more on prioritization tools and so forth. So for the purposes of this mini lesson, this is going to be a very high level prioritization that might not necessarily take into account some of those different areas. But in the course itself, we do go more in depth into backcasting and how to layer it with other helpful tools. So I'm going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes to go through your list that you came up with in the previous step. And you can do one of two things. So you can either start by putting stars or highlighting ones that you think are part of the critical path to achieving your goal. Or you can just start putting numbers next to them. Like if you have a very clear vision, it needs to happen this, and this, start putting numbers next to those items, which will help achieve that end vision. So again, I will give you 2 to 3 minutes to do this. You are looking through your list of all that big brainstorming list from the last step. You're looking at that and starting to choose those actions that will get you closer to that end vision by taking into consideration some things like how much capacity you have and so forth. So I'll give you 2 minutes for that. Again, I will tell you a 30-second warning so that you can wrap up those last thoughts. Okay, just about 30 more seconds. So just wrap up your prioritization thoughts. Okay, so now that you have a rough idea of kind of the path or prioritization, it's time to take action. So I am not a fan of, those plans that get made and then they sit on a shelf and nothing ever happens. So it's really important that coming off of the momentum of doing something like this, that you do start to take action right away. And essentially what you've done is created a roadmap about the desired end vision that is measurable and a step-by-step guide on how to get there. But what you did is you started with the end vision in mind and worked backwards from there, which allowed you to think more creatively and outside of the box. Something that is extremely important in the sustainability field is celebrating milestones. So earlier I mentioned that your vision might take years to get to. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 5 years. But you don't want to wait until the 3 or 5 years to celebrate all of the successes and milestones along the way. So when you look at that critical path that you just created, it's really important to celebrate those milestones. It's really a good opportunity to recognize the work that's happening within your organization and to talk about, look, we're a little bit closer to where we were. Having said that, I just want to bring up the next slide, and that is, success is not a straight line. Very rarely it might be, but more often than not, it's messy and squiggly. And when you're celebrating those milestones, it's a great opportunity to check in, say, how are we doing towards getting towards our end vision? Do we need to adjust anything? But also recognize that if you keep that end vision in mind and just continually keep working towards it, even if it's in a messy, squiggly line, you will get there. I usually recommend not throwing away your mapping exercise once you have your charted path. As we all know, not everything goes according to plan, and sometimes other opportunities arise or there might be a roadblock. You just came up with a ton of different creative solutions that maybe it didn't make your critical path, but they're still really helpful to go back and look at those if things aren't really going according to plan. Those are additional actions that can still work towards achieving your end vision, but maybe it's just a little bit different than you had originally planned. You can come back to backcasting exercises. You could redo them. You could look at some of those other actions that you didn't use and try incorporating those. So don't lose sight of that brainstormed list, just in case you might need to pivot. So that was the mini lesson on backcasting. As I mentioned before, we go more into this concept in the course and how you can use it effectively, as well as a ton of other tools to help your sustainability goals be actionable and achievable within your organizational context. I did want to reiterate that sustainability is not all or nothing. Even small incremental actions make a big difference. Sustainability as a whole can be super overwhelming. I get overwhelmed, but there are tools and groups and professionals and resources like this course that will help you sift through and make your vision tangible, actionable, and help you achieve something sustainability-wise within your organization. So I wanted to thank all of you for participating in the mini lesson and the webinar. I really hope I get to meet all of you in the class and dive a little bit deeper into the field of sustainable business. And right now, I'm actually just going to hand it back to Mackenzie to talk about course offerings, and I'm also happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Kaylin. I would just say if anybody has any questions for Kaylin about her lesson today or about any of the content in the micro-credential, feel free to start putting those in the chat and the Q&A just while I wrap up a little bit here. I am just popping a link into the chat for the a direct link to Kaylin's course on our website. So like I talked about at the beginning, this course is a micro-credential. It's mostly self-paced, but Kaylin's always around for questions. And you do have an assessment to prove a competency in this skill that you could then put on your LinkedIn page and your resume and things like that. So we do have more micro-credentials than just this one. Today's topic was from our Sustainable Business Survival micro-credential, which is next offered in March. Or if you're on the website, you'll also see we have a summer offering as well. We are also currently working on our scheduling for the next academic year. So this will be continued to schedule if you find these ones just really don't fit into your schedule, or if you need to save up a little bit of money for it, because that happens too. Like I said at the beginning, the micro-credentials are supposed to be inexpensive. So this course is only $250 to take, which is absolutely awesome. We do have other micro-credentials in intelligent supply chain and digital marketing. And we're also working on more in areas of data analytics, warehousing, which is just a particular part of supply chain, as well as our professional health education unit is working on a micro-credential in pain management. That sounds really interesting. If you have any questions about any of these micro-credentials or any of our other programming, I have put the link to our front page of our website, as well as our general office email and phone number that you can call and speak to us and let us know if you have any questions. I will also pop into the chat Kaylin's email as well. She welcomes any questions about her particular course or about the webinar today. So you don't have to maybe have thought of questions right now, but if you think of something later, she's definitely welcoming to those. And I think that's it. We didn't have a thank you slide, right, Kaylin? This is the last one.
No, we don't have one.
Yeah.
I unfortunately, because I'm sharing, can't see the chat. So Mackenzie, if you don't mind, if there are any questions, do you mind just reading them out to me?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I don't see anything in the chat. We do have one in the Q&A here. This is interesting. This might be a personal question. What would you recommend MacEwan University prioritize to get on a path to decarbonization?
Oh, this is actually a really good question. I used to work as the director of sustainability at MacEwan before I started doing a lot of my consulting. So I actually think that it should probably be a three-pronged approach. So it's wonderful. MacEwan recently hired a sustainability coordinator for their operations department. So she's going to be focusing on decarbonizing the built environment primarily, which when we used to do our STARS report, which is kind of a sustainability report for post-secondaries, our building consumption in terms of energy was some of our heaviest uses on campus. So I think that if any one area was to be targeted first, I'm really glad that now they are focusing specifically on the built environment. MacEwan also, right near the end of my time, got an ISO 50001 designation, which is a system for continual improvement towards reducing energy on campus. So I think that is a really important stage. The second area I would say is student groups. So we have an unbelievably large number of students that care about sustainability on campus. So through student groups and Campus as a Living Lab projects, I think there's great opportunity to further decarbonize our campus. And those can be grassroots led from the students. So I'm a big fan of Campus as a Living Lab, using our campus as a learning tool. So why not identify some challenges that we have on campus and throw those challenges to the students as part of their learning experience, so that they have that real world opportunity. And the last way I would say is kind of tied with campus as a living lab, and is starting to incorporate some of these decarbonization opportunities and techniques into the classroom. So I teach Sustainability 201, which is a class at MacEwan for students. And we talk about ways that students can decarbonize their worlds, both personally and in their work life, regardless of what industry that they're in, which is one of the great things about not only this micro-credential, but also Sustainability 201, is it's an interdisciplinary group of people being brought together. So everybody gets exposed to these different ideas on energy reduction, decarbonization, and so forth, because there's so many people coming together with different backgrounds.
Thanks so much, Kaylin. I just got another question here. We could pop back up to your slide about this, I think. Can you talk a little bit about what will be covered in the Sustainable Business Survival course?
Yeah, so these are the different modules that we'll be going through. You might want to go back in the recording a little bit, because I kind of highlighted earlier in the presentation what is at a high level covered in each of these modules. But we start very foundationally talking about what sustainability actually is. We talk about impact investing, which is not only how to make your dollars go further organizationally, but also how to make sure that they have a positive social, economic, and environmental component to it. We talk about systems thinking. You heard me say that a few times during this presentation. Systems thinking is foundational to what sustainability is. So we'll be teaching you what systems thinking is, how to look at your organization as a system, and looking at the systems that your organization operates within, and how to identify things like leverage points, where if you focus on this leverage point, you can make significant change within the whole, larger system. Then we really get into how you integrate sustainability into your organization. We get into actually actioning some of your sustainability plans and so forth. So like I said, they're not just a plan sitting on the shelf, they're actually moving towards your end vision. And we also do talk about logistics. Mackenzie mentioned that there is a supply chain micro-credential, and we touch on sustainability supply chain, but there is opportunity to dive further into general supply chain in one of the other micro-credentials. We also talk about certifications for individuals, for businesses, and for products. And we talk about communications and marketing. So it's very wide what we do talk about, but we do want to give you a little glimpse into all of these different areas. And what I've done is I've set it up so in a lot of different areas, you don't necessarily have to go through the extra resources, but if you're particularly interested in something like supply chain, for example, I do give you extra resources that you can look into at your own time. And then in terms of what your end assessment is, so that you can get that little badge that Mackenzie was talking about, you have the choice to complete one of these 4 options, which are business model canvas, developing a business case, a conversation with leadership, and the communications plan. And hopefully one of these is a tool that you could walk away from the course with and implement within your organization, so that you have something that you're walking away with that is usable. If you do have other questions, though, in terms of some specifics, in terms of topics that are covered within the micro-credential, just send me a quick email, and I'm happy to either jump on a Zoom call with you or respond via email about any specific questions about content that you might have.